Now, so we are recording now. So beware, I guess. If you need the captions, there should be a button on the bottom of the screen that says show captions, and those will appear for you. I'm gonna give it a couple of minutes and then we will start. Such a pain in the butt to get into.
I don't think I could do it.
There's the two-factor. Just tech troubleshooting over here. No, as well.
You have a lady upstairs. She said she talked to someone today, and whoever she talked to today told her that it's virtual and in person.
Yeah.
So she's upstairs looking to get in.
So does she have her, think anything is here. So you know what we might do if we can get in.
Conference room is here?
Yeah, so it might be easier. Send her downstairs to the conference room.
Okay,
And we have two people here that are gonna join you. So, yeah,
okay, does she need a laptop or anything? Should I send her?
we have one right here, yeah. Sorry, everybody, there was a miscommunication. Some people thought it was in person, and so I'm just trying to scramble and find a laptop for, oh, marvelous. Okay, so I found a laptop for people, and they're gonna have a conference room, and that way they can make use of the captions and all that fun stuff, because this is a hearing loss program, and we should have captions for it. But all right, I'm gonna give it one more second. All right, sorry about that, Sherry. I don't mean to like put you on the spot there.
No problem. It looks like somebody has their hand raised. I don't know if that was on purpose.
I'm not sure. So it looks like somebody does. If you could put your question in the chat, we will answer it that way. In the meantime, I think we've waited long enough. I think that Sherry is tired of sitting here staring at an empty screen, so I'm gonna go ahead and introduce her. I will say that I read the book that Sherry and Gail wrote a couple of years ago, Here and Beyond, and it's actually the reason that I now have a button that I wear at the library, because like so many hard of hearing people, the pandemic was very difficult on me, and I needed to speak up for myself. And it's something that I'm not good at doing, but I'm trying. And so I figured that it was helpful for me. So I reached out to Sherry, and she so kindly agreed to come and talk to all of you. And I will introduce her and then just let her take over, because she's the professional advocate. I'm just the librarian. So Sherry first noticed her hearing loss in her mid-20s. It has gotten progressively worse since then, and she now wears hearing aids every day to hear better. She's lucky to only have mild tinnitus so far. Shari doesn't want her hearing loss to define her, but she finds that being open about it can help relieve the pressure of always having to hear everything perfectly. So with that, I will hand it over to Shari, please.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you, Brad, and thank you everyone for being here. This is always the most terrifying part of any presentation, but I think I got it,
There we
right? We
go.
can see the slides and everyone can hear me okay? All right, excellent. Well, thanks again for having me. I'm very excited to be here with all of you. And so this talk is all about the hearing loss journey. So I thought I would start off by sharing some of my journey. So I first noticed my hearing loss in my mid-20s, but my journey began well before that, actually, watching my father struggle with his own hearing issues. And he was very stigmatized by it. He would do almost anything to keep it a secret. He had his hair, grown long down over his ears well after that was out of fashion. And I remember family parties where he would be found, often by himself. And as a child, I didn't really understand why he was doing that. But once I developed my own hearing loss, I understood. He probably was having trouble hearing in that loud party environment. And he just had given up. He couldn't bring himself to keep trying. So when I first discovered my hearing loss, I was hiding it, following in his footsteps. I was embarrassed, I was ashamed, and this lasted for many years. But once I had children, everything changed for me because my hearing loss is genetic. And I worried that I may have passed it on to them. And I saw them watching me do the same things I had watched my father do, hiding my hearing loss and laughing at jokes I hadn't heard. And I realized that I was passing on this same stigma to another generation. So I realized I finally needed to accept my hearing loss, which I did. And I started wearing my hearing aids all the time and teaching my family and my friends how they could help me hear my best. I refuse to let my hearing loss isolate me. And it's not always easy, but it's definitely worth it. And now, as Brad said, I am an advocate for people like me, people with hearing loss. I have a weekly blog at livingwithhearingloss.com. And I helped produce a hearing loss documentary during the pandemic called We Hear You. And it's available on YouTube for free, actually, so anyone can watch it. It's in English, and there's also a Spanish version. And then writing Here and Beyond, Live Skillfully with Hearing Loss with another advocate, Gail Hannon. And by sharing my story, I really hope to help other people live more comfortably with their own hearing issues. So before we got too far along, I was going to try and see how many people out there had hearing loss or had a family member with hearing loss, but I'm not sure it's going to work in the webinar format. But I'm going to assume that there are definitely some people out there with hearing loss, probably people who have family members or friends with hearing loss, and maybe even some people who provide services or are educators of people with hearing loss, and others who may not know a lot about it, but they're just interested in learning more. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time just talking about why we should care about hearing loss and why is this a big deal? It's often minimized. A lot of people consider it a normal part of aging, rather than the life-changing condition that really it is. But addressing and maintaining hearing health is a critical part of overall health, for sure. And while it's not always taken seriously, hearing loss is pervasive. And you can see some statistics here. According to the World Health Organization, 430 million people worldwide have hearing loss, and they are expecting that number to double by 2050. And that will mean that 1 in 5 people in all of the world will have hearing loss by 2050. And I find that just a mind-boggling number. And then according to the Hearing Loss Association of America, today there are almost 50 million Americans with hearing loss. Hearing loss is also associated with a number of health issues. So it's twice as common in people with diabetes, and there's a high correlation between hearing loss and cardiovascular disease as well. And it's also associated with a higher risk of falls. There's research that shows people with even a mild hearing loss are nearly 3 times more likely to have a history of falling. And so that's really important if there are any seniors in the audience that may have concerns about balance as well. Now, most alarmingly, when left untreated, hearing loss is associated with a higher risk of developing dementia. But there's no reason to panic, because hearing loss does not mean that someone will develop dementia. And a lot more research is going on into this topic. But hearing loss does often cause people to isolate themselves, and that is a risk factor for dementia as well. And hearing loss is also associated with higher rates of depression and social isolation. Now, all of these things, especially the dementia and the depression and social isolation, are really when the hearing loss is not treated. And so doing something about it can really stem some of those risks. Now, despite all the risks, it's often ignored and sometimes left untreated. Maybe people think they're doing fine most of the time, so why bother? Or maybe they don't understand some of these health risks. And a lot of times stigma and embarrassment might hold them back. That was definitely the case for me. I always find it shocking that only 20% of people who could benefit from wearing a hearing aid actually use one. And for most people, it takes 7 to 10 years before they seek treatment. And now just a quick word about prevention, because I'm not sure, maybe some of you have children at home. And there's a scary statistic from a study back in 2010 that says 1 in 5 teens already have some degree of hearing loss. And I would imagine this number is probably higher today, given all the headphones and the earphones and everything that teenagers are using in their ears. And some people don't realize that once your hearing is damaged, the loss is permanent. And both loudness and length of exposure are important considerations. So please listen safely and make sure that your children are listening safely. The good news about noise-induced hearing loss is that 100% of it is preventable. Just doing 3 simple things. First, move away. So if you increase the distance between you and a loud sound, the impact is much lighter. So for example, if there's a construction site, cross the street to walk by it. Or turn it down. Obviously, listening at the right volume is important. There's a rule of thumb that if you can't hear someone talking next to you over your music, it's probably too loud. And then, of course, protecting your ears. So if you can't move away or turn it down, then block the sound by using earplugs or earmuffs. So please take care of your hearing and that of your loved ones as well. All right, so let's get back to the hearing loss journey. And each hearing loss journey is very unique. And in other words, we all experience hearing loss a little bit differently. Now, there are similarities and differences and ups and downs. And just because you've had hearing loss for a long time doesn't mean you're necessarily good at it. And that was true for my co-author, Gail Hannon, and I. And when we sat down to start writing our book, we began comparing notes about our experiences. And we realized that over the years, and really through trial and error, and by meeting and learning from other people with hearing loss, we had each found our way to a similar set of skills and strategies that help us live well with it. And when we talked about this, what we realized is that when we shifted our goal from hearing better to communicating better, that changed everything. We realized our journey would be better if we just learned to live skillfully. So what does it learn to live skillfully with hearing loss? And we're going to talk about that throughout the presentation. But the first step is knowing what to expect. And that's what we call understanding the big picture. Because if you don't know where you're headed, it's pretty hard to get there. The second step is embracing a 3-legged stool of critical skills to improve communication. And we'll go through those. And then the third step is putting it all together. So taking what you learn about the journey and that 3-legged stool of strategies and applying that to all parts of your life: family, friends, work, entertainment, all the areas of life that get harder with hearing loss because communication takes more work. So let's start off with the big picture. And most of us don't start our journey with a good view of the big picture. Hearing care professionals are crucial to setting the stage, laying that groundwork, but many of them, unfortunately, do not really provide that. Understanding the big picture lets us see that ups and downs are part of the process. So, for example, it takes time to adjust to hearing devices. And if we know that, the fact that they don't work immediately is not seen as a failure. It's just a normal part of the process. I think we also need to understand that hearing aids are not like glasses. They don't solve our hearing problems entirely the way that glasses do for most people. But I think there's this expectation out there that they do. And that can create frustration because we feel like we're failing, right? Because our hearing aids are not solving all our problems right away. And our families might get frustrated with us as well because they're expecting the hearing aids to solve all the communication problems. But we need other tools as well and time to train our brain to hear better. Understanding the big picture also helps us accept the emotions of hearing loss. And these emotions are normal, and we're not alone in feeling sad or angry or maybe even embarrassed that communication takes so much more work. And the big picture shows that there's help and support available, and that asking for this support is not helplessness, it's actually strategic. So, like I said, every journey is unique, but most of them pass through a series of recognizable stages. And the first one is debating with yourself. And here you wonder if you're having trouble hearing or if everyone else is mumbling. And these suspicions might be subconscious as you struggle with some denial. I know I was looking for anything or anyone else to blame but my own poor hearing when I was having trouble hearing in business school. And this stage is the one that can last, 7 to 10 years. The second stage is validating, and that's when we finally decide to get the facts and go for a hearing test. And it might not be what we wanted to hear, but now at least we know the truth. And then stage 3 is taking charge. And this, I think, is the most exciting part of the journey, but it's also the hardest. So now you know you have hearing loss and you're decided to do something about it. And for most people, that means getting hearing aids. But you soon discover, as we were talking about, they're not a standalone solution for hearing loss. So you start to learn as much as you can about your own hearing loss, and you start to figure out what else you need to do to communicate well. And that's really the primary focus of the book here and beyond. Now, stage 4 is living skillfully, and this is the ultimate goal. So in your daily activities and your relationships, you can apply what you learned when you took charge in stage 3. And you're open-minded about adopting a variety of strategies and technologies. And it doesn't mean that every day is perfect and smooth sailing, but you can handle these bumps in the road. You might adapt, you try a new strategy, a new tech tool, and you can keep on going. And then there is stage 5, which we call refreshing and restarting. And this is really what makes the hearing loss experience an ongoing journey rather than a puzzle where you can just find a solution. So just when you think you have it all figured out, something changes, right? Hearing aids might need to be replaced. Maybe your hearing loss changes. Or like Brad was saying, a global pandemic comes along, everyone starts to wear masks, and that changes all the rules of engagement. So any of these things might send you back to a previous point in the journey. And it's a natural part of the process and an opportunity to try something new and to become even more skillful. Now, these stages don't happen overnight. They can stretch out over a few months, but many times it stretches out over years. And Some people never even move out of stage 1. Or maybe the shock of stage 2 sends them running away because they're just not ready. But we believe with support and understanding, everyone can live skillfully with hearing loss. Okay, so let's move on to the second part of skillful living, the three-legged stool. And we call it a three-legged stool because three-legged stools never wobble, even when they're on uneven ground. And I am not sure why that is, the physics of it, but it's pretty cool. And this is really a solid foundation that will help us to switch our focus from hearing better to communicating better. And the three legs here are mind shifts, technology, and communication game changers. And each of them is important, but when the three of them work together, that's really when the magic happens. I have the potential to change my journey. The person with the most power in my hearing loss success is me. Now, I think it's a very moving statement and really a life-changing one because it's the moment you discover that you are in charge of your hearing loss journey. And a lot of that comes down to attitude. So a diagnosis of hearing loss can come with a lot of emotional burdens, right? That paint hearing loss as embarrassing or shameful. Some of these beliefs come from external sources like ads and TV shows that still use poor hearing as the brunt of the joke. And without realizing it, many of us internalize these feelings and we might look down on ourselves. And that can cause us to hide our hearing loss so we don't appear weak or broken. So you can see on this slide some common attitudes that people hold about their hearing loss. And I won't read them all here, but you can see nobody understands what I'm going through. I don't like to advertise my hearing loss. People will think I'm old or slow. Hearing aids are ugly, expensive, don't always work. So you can see all of them here, but these attitudes feed into stigma, and that can prevent us from asking for the assistance that we need to communicate well. Our attitudes towards our hearing loss affect our emotions and also our behaviors. And this is really another powerful statement because it means that life with hearing loss can be different. It can be better just by changing our attitude about it. When we can reframe unproductive, destructive thoughts, like we just saw on that slide, and reposition them as actionable, constructive statements, then we'll have a healthier approach. And now we're not trying to be, overly simplistic here, right? Mind shifts are not cures for hearing loss. But when people with hearing loss actively support their hearing aids with other strategies, including an improved emotional attitude, we can communicate better. So let's look at a couple of examples. The first attitude is nobody understands what I'm going through. And the mind shift is many people experience the same challenges I do. I can learn from them. I'm not alone. So when I first realized I was losing my hearing, I felt extremely alone. I mean, my father had hearing loss, but he wasn't going to discuss it with me. And I didn't know anyone else with hearing loss that could commiserate with me or help me understand there were other things that I could do to live well. I got my first hearing aid in 1995, and I didn't meet anyone else with hearing loss until 2010, when I started volunteering at Hearing Health Foundation. And that was 15 years of wasted time. It took me another 5 to discover HLAA, Hearing Loss Association of America. And that was life-changing because I finally felt less alone in my struggles. I was now part of a community. I remember my first convention that I went to, it was like a shot in the arm, right? All of a sudden, I was surrounded by all these people with hearing loss, and I was inspired by them. So many of them were living successful and productive lives. They were music producers or entrepreneurs and teachers and volunteers, and it really gave me hope, and I saw that I could do it too. And now the second mind shift example, the attitude is, I want to hear better the way I used to. And the mind shift is I want to communicate better, and it takes more than hearing aids to do this. I must use other skills and additional technology. And that's really the crux of skillful living that we've been talking about, right? Shifting that goal from hearing better to communicating better. And one example for me is the first time I used a speech to text app. And it was actually kind of thrilling. I have it on my phone, and I wasn't reliant on just my hearing to follow the speaker. I had another tool as well, and I didn't need anyone's help with it either. I could just put it on by myself. And the transcription wasn't perfect, but it helped, and I could follow along more easily. I felt a lot less tired at the end of the talk. So when we focus on communicating instead of hearing, I think we do a lot better. Okay, so let's look at the second leg of the stool, technology. And for a lot of us, technology can be intimidating. And you'll remember that negative attitude we saw about hearing aids are ugly, expensive, and they don't always work. But to secure this leg of the stool, we need to reframe that attitude into something like what you see here. Technology is my friend. My devices let me hear sounds I had forgotten or had never heard before, and they connect me to other people and the world. So why are people so reluctant to adopt ear technology? And I think part of the issue goes back to those expectations. People don't always really understand that it's going to take work to use hearing technology. They're not like glasses. And I think our hearing care providers could do a better job talking about that with users and potential users about what hearing technology can and cannot do. Hearing aids help speech comprehension, especially in a quiet environment, but they're not enough in every situation. So we need things like remote mics, which are very helpful in noisy situations or anytime you need to bring the sound closer to your ears. Speech to text apps like I was talking about, or our Zoom captioning. I mean, that's one good thing that came out of the pandemic. External accommodations can also be really important life-enhancing tools. Now, I had never heard of CART, and the CART is where there's a real live person who's there typing the captions out in real time, or a hearing loop before I attended my first hearing loss convention. And many of you on this webinar may not have heard of those either. But those types of things can really help us get back out to lectures, movies, the theater. And these are things that our hearing care professionals should be talking to us about. And in the last few years, OTC hearing aids have come on the market as well. And these could provide good entry vehicles for people with mild to moderate hearing loss and good backups for everyone really in a pinch. Some people might only need hearing assistance in certain situations, and so lucky them, but these devices might work for them as well. So if you're looking at hearing aids, the two features that are very important are Bluetooth, and until Auracast, which is a special type of Bluetooth that's coming along probably 8 to 10 years from now, a T-coil. And for now we need both because Bluetooth lets you stream phone calls directly into your hearing aids, watch movies or Zoom calls, and T-coils let you access loop systems that are popping up in public spaces like theaters or lecture halls. So it's kind of an exciting time to have hearing technology, but we need other strategies too, the non-technical type. And so that takes us to the next leg of the stool. I want to communicate better, and it takes more than technology to do this. I must use softer skills as well. And so these are our communication game changers. And sometimes even small changes in communication behaviors can have a really big impact on the quality of the conversation. So a couple of examples. Self-identifying as having hearing loss. Now, that sounds simple, but for a lot of people, this is difficult. It might go against their private nature. There's a stigma. Maybe they don't know what term to use. Should I say I have hearing loss? Am I hearing impaired? Am I deaf? Guess what? It doesn't matter. The more important thing is to describe your hearing loss to someone else and tell them what it's like, but to let them know that you have it. That's more important than the label that you choose. One of our mind shifts is being open about my hearing loss will help me communicate better. Trying to hide my hearing loss leads to misunderstandings. But self-identifying is not always enough, right? People aren't mind readers. We need to tell them what we need and what we don't need from them. And this goes beyond self-identifying. This is really self-advocacy. And part of this is being comfortable asking for repeats. So if we don't ask for what we need, like a repeat, then we may bluff. We pretend, we zone out. Bluffing is really the evil twin of self-advocacy, and learning not to bluff is a communication behavior with very positive impact. There are other tools like speech reading or lip reading, and also communication best practices, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit later in the presentation. And we have one favorite tool that kind of puts it all together, and we call this HEAR. And it's a communication checklist that's quick, it's effective, and it shows you exactly what needs to change in any communication situation and then how to make it happen. And people with hearing loss can use this, but so can their communication partners. My favorite thing is when I go into a restaurant with my family and my son helps me implement it. He's like, okay, Mom, this is how we're going to sit and this is what we're going to do. So here are the steps. The first is hearing check. Can I understand what my communication partner is saying? And if the answer is yes, then you're done. That's great. But if no, then you move on to evaluate. And here's where you think about what can I do to improve the situation? And these could be environmental fixes like more light or maybe a different seat, excuse me, but also communication partner issues like louder or slower speech. And this is also a good time to look at your tech tools and see if maybe an app or an accessory can help. And then the third step is to articulate, right? And this is the hardest part sometimes, telling others what you need. But we can't skip this step because, as we've said, they are not mind readers. Now, we need to do this assertively, not aggressively, for a better result. But you have to remember that articulating your needs creates a situation where your communication partner is benefiting as well. So it's not a purely selfish endeavor. It's really for the benefit of everyone involved. And then lastly is revise and remind. And that's kind of like that last stage of the hearing loss journey, because sometimes adjustments need to be made. Maybe a musician arrives and the noise level picks up, or more likely your communication partner slips back into their old speech patterns. So you reapply the steps when the listening situation changes, even if it's just to remind people of what was already suggested. It's simple and effective, and I think with practice, it really becomes second nature. Okay, so the final feature of skillful living is applying what you know about the journey and the three-legged stool of skills to all aspects of life, especially the most important part, which are relationships. And hearing loss really slams its fist into our communication-based relationships. And we have a whole section of the book on that in terms of how to manage them better. So if you think about it, for new relationships, right, there's always a filtering process. Nice person, check, fun to be around, check, intelligent, check. But for people with hearing loss, there's that extra question. Can I understand this person? And if it's not a check, we might be in trouble, or maybe with some skill and honesty, we can communicate well. But with existing relationships, we don't get to choose, right? We may have trouble understanding our family and our friends and colleagues or our boss, and they might get frustrated with us because of that. but there are ways to make it work in terms of skillful communication. And then hearing hacks. So we all know hacks are workarounds or tricks for doing things more efficiently or better. And there are also hearing hacks, and we have a whole section of the book devoted to that as well. And a big hearing hack is to make partners out of the people in our life. A support network doesn't mean that they're just going to cheer us on and listen to us, cry when we're unhappy. They may also offer tough love and tell us truthfully how we're doing. And we can create support networks within our family, our friends, our colleagues. I mean, Brad's creating it here at the library, which I think is really, really tremendous. And of course, our hearing care professionals as well. That can be a very important relationship and support if you can find the right one. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how people can support people with hearing loss in their life. Maybe not everyone here has hearing loss, or if you do, share this with the people in your life who are supporting us. So first step, I think, is really understanding the myths. We talked about this a couple of times, that hearing aids don't work like glasses, but I do think that is a big source of frustration and conflict within relationships when people with hearing loss and their friends and their family don't understand that fact. And then also the fact that less than 5% of people with hearing issues use sign language. So Brad was saying that there really is a wide range of hearing loss. It's not one thing. And I totally agree with that. But sometimes if I'm going into a new situation and I say I need some hearing help, like maybe in the doctor's office or at the hospital, they will assume that a sign language interpreter is going to help me. And for many people, some people who are deaf and do use sign language, that is the accommodation they need. But for most of us, that is not the accommodation that we need. And so it's important for people to understand that as well. I think caregivers really need to help keep the devices in working order, make sure that the batteries are changed regularly. Sometimes these hearing devices are very small and fine motor skills are required to change these batteries, and it can make it challenging. When planning events, use universal technology like hearing loops and captioning, and encourage other people to use them as well. And I would say help the people with hearing loss in your life embrace new technologies. So speech to text apps, everyone should have them on their phone, and most of them are free. And honestly, a lot of this tech is kind of fun to play with. So you can turn that into sort of a fun thing for the family to do together. And then obviously, or maybe not obviously, encouraging peer support. It was a huge difference in my life, and for many people with hearing loss, having that support of someone who can really understand the day-to-day. Communication best practices. So using communication best practices is a must. Like I've said, even small changes in behavior can create huge improvements in our ability to communicate well. So our communication partners can help us by getting our attention before speaking. Sometimes we don't know that someone's speaking to us, but if they get our attention, then we won't miss the beginning of what they're saying and already be lost. And then watch for comprehension. If somebody is crunching up their face or leaning forward, they're probably not hearing. So watch for that. And if you see that, ask them, can I repeat that? Are you hearing me okay? Speak clearly and at a normal pace. Speaking too slowly, which a lot of people do, or shouting loudly, actually distorts the mouth and makes it harder to speech read. So speaking clearly and at a normal pace is important. And then, of course, keeping your mouth visible to help with that speech reading. Don't be shy about adjusting the surroundings, right? Turn the noise down. Turn the lights up. We need to be able to see people to speech read them. And then take turns speaking. It's very hard, especially if you're lip reading, to, if people are talking over each other, who are you looking at? It's very, very hard to hear in that kind of a situation. People should also be prepared to repeat or rephrase as needed, and lead with kindness. Phrases like never mind are hurtful, right? It's very dismissive. So if someone asks you what you said, find a way to repeat it rather than dismiss them. All right, so here are a couple hearing loss resources I wanted to share. The first is HLAA, or Hearing Loss Association of America. They are the largest consumer organization in the US for people with hearing loss. And they do a lot of advocacy, both on the national level for things like getting hearing aids covered by insurance, and on the local level as well. They have meetings and do lots of local advocacy projects as well. They have a national convention annually in June, which is a lot of fun. So if anyone's interested in that, happy to connect you. Obviously, audiologists, ENTs, primary care physicians can be good resources to help diagnose and treat hearing loss. If someone's a little bit shy and they just want to dip a toe in the water, there are lots of good Facebook groups and Instagram accounts. HLAA has one. I have one on Facebook as well called Living with Hearing Loss. And it's easy to just poke around for a while and maybe pick up some information you need or ask a question. Now, it's the internet, so not all the information is perfectly accurate, and you need to ignore, the haters. But most people are pretty kind and willing to help, and it's a good sort of first step if you're shy about it. Books, obviously, like Here and Beyond, Live Skillfully with Hearing Loss, and other books, and blogs as well. This is another way to get great information on a more anonymous basis. And mine is livingwithhearingloss.com. So I just wanted to end with this one last thought. Living skillfully with hearing loss is an ongoing process. And so for each of us, the journey continues. And the good news is that we are all on this journey together. So thank you all for your attention. And I have listed my websites and my email address here. So please reach out. I do love to hear from other people with hearing loss. And if you're looking for more details on some of these topics, you can check out Here and Beyond, hereandbeyond.com for more information about the book, and my email here as well. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I am looking forward to answering some questions if there are some.
Thank you so much, Shari. I found that helpful. I am going to give everybody the opportunity, please. If you have a question, please type it out in the chat and or the Q&A. I see somebody who's already there. You guys are quick. Where can we get your book?
Oh, well, that's an easy question. Anywhere that books are sold, actually. They're in libraries. I don't know, Brad, if you have one in the library.
I bought one. After I read it, I bought it for the library.
Yeah, we love being in libraries because that way, more people can read them, right? They're on Amazon. It's also available as a audiobook if people enjoy listening to audiobooks. So if you go to hearandbeyond.com, HEAR, right, AND beyond.com, there are links to a bunch of places you can buy them online, but also in bookstores as well.
I'm pasting a bunch of resources in the chat.
Okay.
So you can actually just go ahead, and that third link is what Shari was just talking about, where you can order it. The first link is the entry to my consortium's copies. We don't have too many, but librarians are always looking for book recommendations. So I know there are people here not from my consortium. If your local library does not have it, ask them to buy it, or buy it yourself and support Shari.
Yeah.
The second link was Shari's blog itself, Living with Hearing Loss. Also, this is the documentary. I watched that a little while ago. It was good. And here is the HLAA national website. Great stuff there. And there's a Boston chapter, and here is their. I'm a volunteer, so full disclosure, I'm a technology volunteer for them. So this is our contact information. So yeah, so all that stuff is there. So okay, I was talking too much, and there are more questions. My name is Jonathan Ozek. I have a question. How can people overcome a challenge when they are being discriminated?
Oh, well, that's a really great question. And we do have some protection under the law, the ADA. There's something, it's called the Americans with Disabilities Act. And people are required to provide access, communication access for people with hearing loss. But not everyone is aware, A, of this fact. And number two, the enforcement of it sometimes is not so great. So I always say, try with honey. Make sure that you ask for any assistance that you want with communication well in advance, explain why it's important, and try and approach them in a really nice way. Then if you're getting pushback, maybe you try and find some other people who are having the same issue, and you come together and you explain again why this is an important issue and what they need to do in order to make that clear. And then the third step is you can say, this is actually required under the law, and explain to them that type of situation. I find that not everyone, but usually it's step two, if you can if it's not just for you, but you can show that there is a need more broadly within your community. So for example, if you are attending classes at a community college, right, or something like that, and you can go in and you can show that there are a number of students who would benefit from captioning or from a hearing loop or something of that nature, or even just Zoom captioning, like tell them to turn the Zoom captions on. That often works, but it's really just about persistence. I think always start again with the honey and the sweetness, then become more assertive. And then if you need to, you really have to demand their rights, because it is our right to hear and be heard, and to have that communication access.
Great. I think took me a while, but when the pandemic started, I've always had so many problems with the phone. I just can't hear on the phone very well. And so this is actually a T-coil headset. So I changed my hearing aids to the T-coil. And one of the things that I noticed, obviously it's much clearer than the phone, but it also uses both ears. And so I found that so helpful. It's like my deafness, thankfully, is equal in both ears. So it doesn't matter which ear I'm on. It's going to be hard, but only being able to use one was really challenging. So I was able to get work to buy this for me. It's not cheap, but it enables me to do my job better. And so that's another tack you could take.
That's terrific. Yeah, doing your own research, right? Finding your own solution rather than expecting them to find that solution. If you come to them with the problem solved, that can be a very effective way to do it.
Let's see any other questions here. I will say next month, I have actually another program where I'm just going to basically talk about what apps I use for my hearing aids.
That's great.
So one thing that I'll talk about is AVA, AVA. It's basically, if you have an iPhone, you also have Live Transcribe. It's just closed captions, and we use that for a program. I think it was last week, where like we had someone who needed captions for the program, and it's an accommodation that we should be able to offer. And we kind of put something. It's not perfect because it's automated and it's using AI, and despite all the fears, AI is not going to take over the world anytime soon. But it was helpful. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, and actually both both the Apple and also Android phones have it built into the operating system. So even if you don't have an app, you can just go into the accessibility settings on your phone and turn on, I think it's called live transcript on one and live transcribe on the other. And one tip that I think is huge is if you use the Google Chrome browser,
Mm,
every video, every media that you stream, whether it's a YouTube video or just a movie or anything, if you put the accessibility setting on, a little black box will pop up from the bottom and it will start to caption immediately. And it took me a long time to realize that, but that is huge. So Google Chrome browser is another really good captioning tool.
I use that as well. Sometimes if you're streaming something from one of the many streaming services,
Yeah.
the timing can be off for the captions from the service,
Mhm.
but that Google transcribe is better. It's so strange.
Well, and it's AI, like you said. I mean,
Yeah.
it's, the AI captioning, knock wood, is getting better and better. Now, it's hard if there's jargon, right? Or if there's sort of, non-native English speakers. Sometimes it's hard with an accent, but in general, they do pretty good and they're getting better and better.
It's there. Have you seen any of the closed caption glasses yet, Sherry?
Mhm.
There's a couple of different companies. I saw a demo for a couple of them. It's fascinating because that's one of the issues I have with, like, if I'm on the reference desk and I can't hear someone, which happens a lot, I can't like hold up a phone and like hold it next to their head. That doesn't work very well. So I'm excited to see that development.
I think that would be incredible. That's what I dream of. Like, can't just everyone just have them on their forehead? You know what I mean? Just like, I
Yeah.
don't think that's a big problem. Just
Yeah.
stick something up there. I
Yeah.
tried a couple of them, or maybe just one of them at CES last year, and they're definitely making progress. But, the hard thing I think is to get the field of vision
Yeah.
correct, right? So it's like if I'm looking at the captions, it kind of looks like I'm cross-eyed, right? Because I'm not looking at you, I'm like looking at the captions. So you got to get the captions to the same field of vision
Yeah.
as the person. But it takes a while, but there's progress, so that's good news.
Encouraging. These are just comments. But Kathy said thank you. Very informative. So not really a question, but a comment, which
Thank
is
you.
good.
Good.
So I will mention one more like event because this is April, I think last year became National Deaf History Month, and so I wanted to do some programming about the deaf and hard of hearing, which is why I reached out to Sherry. But I also reached out to a patron that we have who's actually here tonight. Hey, Carol. And Carol works for Deaf Inc. And she also did a triathlon and came in third. I don't care if you can hear or not, that is an impressive achievement. And so she graciously volunteered to come in and talk about it. And we're actually going to flip the interpretation on its head, and she's going to sign, and we're going to have an interpreter interpret for us. And so I post that link in the chat as well, because as Sherry said earlier in the presentation, there's a wide scope when it comes to deafness. And so we have the hearing impaired in one end and then completely deaf in the other. And so we wanted to kind of show that when you say deaf, it doesn't always mean completely. But I know personally, I have gotten that comment before that like I can hear some, so I'm not deaf, and it's kind of invalidating, which is one of the reasons that I wanted to put on many different kinds of programming. So that will be Saturday, April 20th, and that one is in person. So I know we had some confusion for tonight, but I think everything's worked out.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, so there's also the Woo Sox, the Worcester Red Sox has a deaf appreciation night. I don't know if that's the exact terminology, but on May 3rd at 6 p.m. There will be an event in Worcester. So that's the AAA affiliate. I think they've been in Worcester for like 3 years, and I just realized that this year the Red Sox don't have a AAA team in Rhode Island anymore. It's in Worcester now, and I'm behind the times. But yeah, so that's becoming popular too, is like deaf awareness programs at baseball stadiums. So Worcester, May 3rd, 6 p.m.
Awesome. And one other thing to mention is there's a movie called Rally Caps. I was actually just at the New York City Real Abilities Festival yesterday, and it's a really cool movie, especially if you know of children with hearing loss. So it's a story about a little boy at a baseball camp who gets injured and how he comes back from that. But one of the other characters has hearing loss and wears a cochlear implant and a hearing aid. And it's just part of the story, but it's actually really well done and actually very accurate in terms of the way that it portrays it and very empowering, especially I think for children who might have hearing loss and maybe don't have a lot of representation
Mm.
in media or books or things of that nature. So that's another good one to mention actually for that group.
What was it called again?
It's called Rally Caps. So like, if you're like get your rally caps on, if your team is losing or whatever. So when you mentioned the Boston Red Sox, it made me think of
That's
that.
good.
I'm glad you said that.
All right. I don't see any more questions, so I will let you go for tonight. I would just want to say thank you so much. I loved the presentation, and everybody go read the book. There's so many skills. Like I said earlier, I've labeled myself. I still have problem. I don't know what to call myself. Am I deaf? Am I hard of hearing? And I go back and forth because it's the self-advocacy part that Shari was talking about. It's a work in progress, and
Yes.
it's going to be that way for probably ever. But I'm okay with that, as long as I can get to the point where I remember to ask for help, because that's really what it comes down to. But
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
great. So thank you so much, and have a good night.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Okay, everybody.
Bye.